Welcome to Bigfoot
and the Bunny.
This is a couple's journey into the mysterious,
the unknown, and the paranormal.
I'm your host, Chris Carr.
And I'm your host, Kristen Johnson.
Together we are Bigfoot and the Bunny.
And there we are. Welcome to Bigfoot and the Bunny. And thank you guys for hanging with us. Again, we were running a little late. I know we're perpetually late, but for different reasons.
This time we had no audio.
So. We had some technical difficulties getting things ready. But hey, we're here. And you guys are here. And I see a bunch of you out there. What's up, Linda?
Hi, Linda.
Jack Kilowatt.
Hello, my friend. Our friend.
I see Cheryl-Ann. Hey, Cheryl-Ann.
Hey, Cheryl-Ann.
How are you? Bob Burnell. What's going on? What's
Hi,
happening,
Bob.
buddy? Mort Ali. How's it going, Mort?
Hi, Mort.
Robert Green. What's going on? Donna. It's like the roll call. That's
like
awesome. We love you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a wonderful show for you. It's been a good week. Thursday was fun too.
Yes.
We had our own weird technical difficulties, but different ones then, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. All kinds of weirdness going on. But yeah, it was cool talking to Keith Linder about his haunted house. I see Darren Allen out there. What is going on, Darren? What's happening?
Hi, Darren.
Barbara Woodbury Spear.
Hi, Barbara.
Kristen Pickett.
That's a while ago.
So cool. So cool. So our guest tonight is no stranger to the show. She's been on before, and we've been on her wonderful show as well. And we're going to talk about that. We have some other special guests from her radio team to bring on as well. Are going to join us, and we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. The physics of sorcery, of communicating with the dead. What are these non-human entities? You know, there's so much going on in the media right now.
Oh, God.
You know, with ufology just blowing up and, well, hopefully not really blowing up, but, you know, kind of blowing up our news feeds and all that. And it's wonderful what's going on. We get closer to disclosure. And in the spirit of that, I think we have to keep an open mind because the possibilities of whether it's aliens, you know, being here, the entities that we try to communicate with and do and sometimes utilize. And we'll talk about that too. There's a lot of crossover in this phenomenon, and we want to get right down to it and what it means. So our guest is Sorceress Cagliastro. She's Cagliastro Media founder, public relations, media brand development specialist, a creator of Iron Ring Sorcery, author of 46 books, and a mogul in the hands of 9. Let's bring her right on. Good evening, Sorceress.
Good evening. How are you two?
We are great. How are you?
I'm fantastic all the time.
Thank you for your patience in getting this all together.
That's quite all right.
Well, kind of a rough start, and I had some stuff worked out too for the intro, and I forgot all about it.
Well, I have truly learned what the beginning of every radio show can be like now.
Oh, right. Yeah, you would know it, and you've been doing radio for a long time.
Yes.
Even aside of your most recent project.
Yes, yes.
So you know, live without a net is just just that.
It feels like all the time. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, it is fun. There's a certain element of danger to it. I think that I really appreciate. Kristen loves as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it reminds me of playing in bands years ago, doing live performances and stuff like that, where just anything could happen, good or bad.
Yeah, yeah. You might hear dogs in the background. I can't do anything about that.
That's okay.
We won't ask you to.
Okay.
Friends of the dog family and cat family, whatever pets. Do you still have a Craven?
Yes.
I do not. She is no longer with us.
She has moved on, passed on.
That will occur again probably in a year or two, and I'm in a place that I feel is the right environment for such a wonderful creature. I'll do it again.
I don't know. You had a Craven, which is a hybrid of crow and raven.
Yes.
And she spoke, and she would scream murder.
She would scream help because I was traveling once and I left her to be watched by a vet, and the vet tech at night said, "Oh, this is one of those birds that can learn to talk." And he taught her to scream help. It was really awful because I just couldn't stop her from doing it. And I would go out and someone would say, "I thought someone was being murdered in your apartment." was terrible. It went on and on and on. But she was wonderful, and I would love to have that experience again, but not until I've moved to somewhere where I feel like it's the right energy.
Well, that's good.
That's a good way to look at it too, as well.
Yeah, don't
That
don't
you
need to
know.
force it.
Nope.
Yeah.
Wait for the right time.
I
Timing
just
is-
want a raven. I want a raven, and I want to like have it outside, so it can fly and be free. But that's my bird.
They're really not really any different than cravens. Cravens have all the mental capacity of a raven, and they have a slightly smaller body, but they're not mixed with common black crow. They're mixed with pied crow, so they're quite large, and they have the long beak. And the only reason that's what I had is because that's what's legal to buy. You
I
can't.
see.
Yes.
We
can't-
have a large raven population right here where I'm living now,
Mhm.
and we have a deck and we feed the birds, and we have a lot of cool birds because we're right near a river. A Blackstone River
Mhm.
is within eye shot of this, and there's a lot of woods here, and there's preserves and things of that nature. So we get some unusual things, cranes. I saw a vulture raven
Oh,
one
yes.
day, and that's
They're
quite
amazing. They're amazing.
yeah, really strange how it really does look like a vulture.
Yeah.
It's all black and
Yeah.
yeah,
They're,
get a
they're
little bit
amazing.
raven to it.
Beautiful. And we have seen that woodpecker that everyone says was may be extinct, isn't extinct. And when I lived in the state I lived in before this one, there was a pair of them in the backyard, and I didn't know what they were. They're quite large. They're like 2 feet tall. They're very big birds.
Good Lord.
And I was doing a lot of sorcery to bring back extinct species at that time. Because I would really like to see what that would be like, and it's always been something that's on my mind. And I had a fire pit, and I was burning things and creating a scenario for the reentry of extinct animals. And then those birds were in my backyard, and I didn't know that they were thought to be extinct. And now there's people trying very hard to get photos of them and all that kind of thing. But they were in my backyard for months.
Wow.
Quite
Wow.
amazing. Pecking at the fence, as woodpeckers do.
I like how you put that. You said you were creating a scenario.
Yes.
Were
yes.
you creating a void?
Oh, always. It's always a void. You can't, there's nowhere to put something unless you open a space up. So when you open the space up, they can come in. I have a fascination with velociraptors. And I'm not really a dinosaur person per se, but just this particular animal, there's something about it. So I thought that if I could create a scenario and an energy where that could happen, it would also assist those who are trying to recreate them. So the void is open. It's going to be wonderful when it happens.
One of the things
Oh, yeah.
you often say to your students, of which I have certainly been one, and we have a few in the audience tonight, which is
I
really
bet we do.
is that all voids must get filled.
Yes.
You're thinking of this in a way of sorcery and an intention of having this openness. Something is going to fill that, occupy that space.
Yes. I give the example that if you dig a hole in the sand, you can't stop it from filling in. It might not fill in the second you're looking at it, but it will fill in. It is natural for where there was something, for there to be something else. And in sorcery, when you open a void, the important action is to decide what goes in it. That's what makes the difference. You don't want anything to be left random. So open a void through sorcery using your sensation of desire and require are really the best ways to approach that, because then it will only fill with that. It becomes sort of a fingerprint that you haven't seen yet. It's a fingerprint of what it is you're requiring, and that's what will fill the void, because that's the only thing that will fit.
Makes a lot of sense, and certainly works in practice, for
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
Now, I would put a title up for the show where we would talk, because there's so many things we can talk about.
Of course.
But I think an attractive topic is kind of the physics of what the discarnate, the dead.
Mhm.
I know you prefer that word discarnate, and that's a good one.
Yes.
And non-human entities, which would be things like demons or aliens or guiding spirits, or it seems like a whole realm of things that could fit in that non-human cup, if you will. And humans love to pigeonhole things, right? We want to put everything
Oh,
in the jar
that's
and put a label on it,
yes.
put it away to understand it.
Mhm.
And I'll just switch the camera here. There you go. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, you can call something anything you want to call it, but it doesn't know it's called that, so it doesn't matter. We have to label things. It's what we must do. It's how we take a position. It's how we can apply our mental energy to it, is to say that thing over there. We write equations in sorcery. So when people write equations, they often make the mistake of the over specifics. You have to protect your focus and use that as an over specific or as a specific. But if you desire to have communication with various types of entities, then you can be a little bit more broad. I specifically work with the disincarnate and with demons, mostly my attending demons, 1 through 9, and 4 others. But there are many, demons are everywhere. Wherever there's a crisis, wherever there's a conflict, wherever there's stress and sorrow and pain and some kind of conflict like that, demons show up. That's what they come from. And people talk about shadow people and spirits, and the language is endless, but it's either, to me, non-human or human. And I think that within the human structure, I think that can be a variable also, because I have one disincarnate that I'm very close to, who I'm not absolutely sure was ever really fully human. So
Interesting.
yeah, it's a fluid almost kind of thing.
Where do you stand with things like fragmented souls? And when people talk about that, or the soul being like maybe in 3 parts or more. A lot of shamanic traditions do this. A lot of people involved in witchcraft will do that as well. And they'll say, all right, the soul is like 3 parts. And I think some of this is very interesting, where like you may have a lower self that goes back to the earth and the ancestors, and the higher, more etheric self, and something in the middle that's trying to make sense of it all that we call human.
Well, I don't know what the soul is. The word itself is something that people use in so many ways. I mean, what does it mean? Does it mean the essence of a human being? Does it mean the construct? Does it mean all the blocks that have to be stacked up to create a human being? Maybe it means that. Does it mean when the body is gone and what's left to move around? I mean, if it's anything, I would assume it's that. And I have found that the disincarnate are not that much different than the living, except that they become more of who they are. And I've talked quite a bit about that. I've said if you're a happy person, if you like the word happy, I mean, I don't know what that means, but if you're a person who sees things in a certain way, you see them more like that as a disincarnate. If you're a violent person, then it tends to create more violence post-mortem. And I think that that's because the constraints are off. But I rarely see that compartmentalization that people talk about, that more like esoteric kind of thing. I just follow what they tell me, or I talk about what they tell me. And what they tell me is that they're over there now and they're doing different things, and they seem relatively still assembled in a way. They don't seem as if they have become separated or disjointed, or that parts of them are going to different places. I've not seen evidence of that in the tens of thousands of disincarnate I've spoken to. So I don't really know what that means.
And you do have a lifetime of doing this.
Yes.
And I know we've talked about this before, but I guess briefly, you were seeing dogs as a child, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, a crack about this when we were on your show recently. We're definitely going to talk about that.
Yeah.
About that, like you could just find yourself, if you're in this field, with a person in the room that looks for Bigfoot, another person that talks to dogs that no one else sees.
Right. When I was very young, like under 8 years old, I noticed that there were these 2 large black dogs in my bedroom all the time when I was going to sleep at night, and they'd greet me at the door and all this kind of thing. And then one day I asked the person who I thought was my mother and who's not, why don't we feed our dogs like other people feed their dogs? And she said, "Oh, is this one of your illusions? Is this one of your crazy stories?" And I thought, well, no, it's actually what I see every day of my life. And after that period of time, those dogs start to reveal themselves. It's what became attending demons. And I think that what they did was produce themselves in some form they felt that a child could deal with. I don't know how they knew that, maybe by experiment, but they produced a tolerable image.
Right. And you would go on in somewhat service, as you put it, to
Oh
the
yeah,
discarnate.
I've been in service to the disincarnate my whole life, through just dealing with them and seeing them at such a young age, and having a sense of, fearlessness, if you like that word. And then later on, I went on to be a trade embalmer, and I worked for a medical examiner for 6 years as an autopsy tech. And I also did forensic reconstruction, where they send you the skull and you put the face back on through use of
Right.
clay and math and all that sort of thing. Now that's done a little bit more digitally. I did death duelings. I was a death doula, which I didn't realize I was, for a long time, helping people get through that process without panic. So I've been in the service to the disincarnate my entire life. Whether I chose it or not, it just was part of my world.
Let's touch on a couple of those
Sure.
things. So being a medical examiner, you're in a very heavily trafficked environment. So you were dealing with a lot of dead people, lots of corpses, lots of disincarnate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was one in a very big city where there were sometimes as many as 10,000 bodies a year that would go through there. And when you work for a medical examiner's office, it's very different than working in the morgue of a hospital, because in a morgue of a hospital, likely most of those people had disease or discomfort or some kind of circumstance through which death seemed apparent. But when you work in a medical examiner, a coroner's office, for people who, prefer that term, most of the people who are there didn't know that day they'd be dead. It's suicide, it's homicide, it's sudden, like, aneurysms, all kinds of things. And sometimes the finding of missing persons who would turn up months later, and we'd have those kinds of bodies. I spent a great deal of time telling them they were dead. And I would find that they were walking around like, what's going on? What's happening here? More so, I mean, I don't want to drag your audience into serious sadness, but more so the children, because the children don't really have a concept of death. The adults look around, they see the drawers, they've seen things like this in films, they know that they're in this kind of a place, but the children don't. So I spent a lot of time with children who were murdered or who, died in a sudden accident. And some famous cases, some not so famous cases, but they need to be told, they need to be helped. They don't understand where their family is. They don't understand what's happening. So that's why I'm saying I've just always been in service to them. And they look right at me. They know that I can see them.
Right. Two things on that real fast.
Yeah, sure.
The kids, do you think this is why it's almost a stereotype where, you go into a cemetery and there's ghost kids? There's ghost kids found in every town. There's always urban legends around them. Are there really a lot of ghost kids because they are kind of stuck here?
Yeah. I don't use the term ghost kids. I use the term.
I just made it up.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to mention that. Yes, they are plentiful. They are plentiful where they see their closest connection suffering the most. So when people visit their graves, the disincarnate children get some sensation that that's an important place to be. Some of them don't even realize that that's where their bodies are. But they go there because families come and still play with them, in a sense. Bring them toys, sit on the ground, this kind of thing. The more parents or family or friends will do that, the more disincarnate children will sit there or show up or wait around for a long time.
Put intention into their memory, right?
Yes.
Thinking about them.
Sure.
Because it is so tragic for the parents and the family around those kids that they would get even more attention than, say, somebody maybe expected that was 90 and they passed on, that kind of thing.
Of course.
The other thing I wanted to ask was, like, if you're talking about disincarnate that have been dead for months and still don't know that they're dead, does some of that have to maybe play into the fact that, and this is the physics, right? Time doesn't matter as much as you've crossed. So you could have months of just like nobody's paying attention to me, and it could feel like a moment.
Well, I remember one particular disincarnate who was a young girl who they found buried in one of the other boroughs. And she was, her physical body was well into decomposition. It was one of those dental records kind of thing or DNA kind of thing. And she stood there and she's looking at me and she said, I was alive, like I was home a minute ago. And she had been missing for 3 or 4 months. And I said, well, you weren't. And explained to her. And she said, I don't understand. And I said, okay, she was a high school student. I said, okay, you know what a semester is? And she said, yes. And I said, so you've been missing since the beginning of the semester and the semester's over. And like she got it. I saw her get it. And she became very shaken and she began to scream about her family and her little brother and are they sad? Are they okay? And I said, well, of course they're sad. Of course they're wrecked and devastated, but now they have some sensation of at least finding the physical part of you. She ran around that morgue the whole day, like screaming, carrying on. It was quite a lot. It was a lot.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Our friend Bob Burnell has a question that's relevant to that. It says, does it matter if you're buried or cremated?
No, it doesn't, Bob. I don't think so. It does to the disincarnate who had a belief about that. So if you were somebody who didn't want to be cremated, and you were, there's always a fuss. I have a friend who his family whisked his body away and cremated it, and his whole life he said he never wanted to be cremated, and he's still in a rage about it. And he died several years ago. So I don't think it matters in terms of if the question is, does it matter? Can they communicate as well? It does not. But they do sometimes take tremendous objection to the way that their body was handled, mostly adults, older adults.
So the belief system plays a role.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Well, and also there are those that are, I remember a woman who said to me that she had suffered through terrible claustrophobia her whole life and wanted to be cremated, but she was buried. And she said it's still going on. Like the idea that she was in a box was torture for her into eternity. I didn't know the family. I mean, it wasn't really my place to mention it. And she asked me to talk to the family, but that didn't happen. You know, you can only handle the sadness, stress, torture, and pain of so many people in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And, pick carefully, pick very, very carefully.
This is so interesting. And to me personally, because it is one of the biggest draws to sorcery and magic and all of this, doing the paranormal, whatever it is, studying aliens, is the communication and that want to know what happens when we cross over.
Mm-hmm.
Is such a driving force. And I feel like the phenomena is all related. We both do. We talk about this all the time on the show. That's really, when we're talking about aliens, I think we are talking about some of the things we might call demons or just non-human entities or some other thing that just isn't human but has some ability. And in the presence of them, you do feel a difference.
Yes,
especially as you gain experience in these things, right?
There are endless types of them. Who knows? I only know what I can see and talk about, but if I can see and talk about this much, who knows what's out there? And sometimes sometimes I don't know if they're dead. Like I see someone and I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I don't know how often that happens. It probably happens more often than I know. But sometimes I have a feeling, I'm like, I don't think you're alive. And then I can extract some kind of sensation or data and figure out that that's true. But that happens all the time because I see them that clearly. They can touch me. Not all of them, but some of them can touch me. I don't love that, but it happens.
And you're clearly alert, and when I say that because it's places like the hypnagogic, hypnopompic states, waking up from sleep or going into sleep.
Yeah.
Or putting your brain maybe in a theta state. Maybe we can talk about brain waves a little bit. It's kind of where like a lot of this communication seems to happen,
right.
Be it through a magic path, be it through an alien abduction, right? So we've talked to lots of abductees on the show, for example, very serious people about this.
Sure.
that, I've had these experiences and it's hard to deny them. But that seems to be a common factor as sort of a gateway. But it's not exclusive. Like yourself, it's like you were just born wired for this.
Yes, absolutely born wired for this. I don't remember a time where this wasn't happening. There were children I saw when I was very little that I would talk about to other people who were like, no, that's not real, or that's the kid that died down the block, the whole this kind of thing. There was a little boy who used to run across my backyard when I was very young, and he always had like a black and white striped shirt on and little shorts. And I'd see him run all the way across the yard. Like I never really saw where he was going. And I would always see him from inside the house or the window. And I said something to one of the other adults in the house, and she said, oh, yeah, well, that's just an urban legend. We've all heard about that. And eventually someone said to me, do you notice he doesn't grow up? And I thought, oh, yeah, he doesn't. But I was so young, it was just not really clear. This whole idea of what we see and what we don't see, and is why it's so important to do shows like this, to do shows like I'm doing, to do shows, right? Because we're now interested in moving my show into talking to scientists, talking to people who are archaeologists, anthropologists. Those are the kinds of people that we're going to be moving into now, because I want to see where they are in these crazy stories, the stories that they think are crazy. And if you talk to a scientist, especially a physicist, long enough about this, you'll come to some place in the middle, because he can't prove his thing. I guess he feels I can't prove my thing. And yet we're all just talking about matter. I see what I see. I talk to who I talk to. It makes no difference to me whatsoever who believes that or not. I don't care. But I know for sure when someone comes to me and says, I want to talk to my aunt, my grandmother, my kid, whatever, I say, tell me nothing else. Not another word. I don't want a name. I don't want an age. I don't want anything. And if it's in person, I have that person turn their back so I can't read their facial expressions. And have them, I say to them, okay, and we start our session, and I'll say, there's always an identifier. I ask the discarnate to give me an identifier. And I'll say, okay, tell me something only this person would know, or something this person would know that proves that you're there, because I don't know you. And they'll say something like, they'll talk about an outfit that they wore in a particular thing, or they'll talk about some kind of marker that proves that that's them. And that's just what I do. I don't know how it's done. I don't really have a method. I just do it.
Some call that evidential mediumship.
Yes.
There's some amount of evidence that is brought over.
Yeah.
And I think that's wonderful. And it's much more convincing, because what we're talking about is a real paradigm shift in the way we appreciate the planet in our 3D reality, if you will. It's so different. There's so much more here and present than we are aware of. And I think the average person, not yourself in particular, really relies on the ground beneath their feet being hard and having the certain Newtonian physics rules work. But in these sort of events, wherever under the umbrella they may fall, physics goes right out the window.
Always.
Yes.
Things can move and fly across the room.
Yeah,
and,
they can.
and it doesn't make sense to your brain.
It's not even that physics go out the window. It's that this is part of physics, and that it's not really thought of that way.
Right.
Because we don't totally understand it yet.
Right.
Whether it lies in quantum or maybe something we haven't even figured out.
Correct. Just because I can see someone doesn't mean they have a temperature. So it's a very interesting sensation to see the non-physical. And when I talk to physicists, because I do, and I'll be talking to more of them, and I can't wait to do those shows because it's so exciting for me to be at the table with people who have science in their name. And then we can take that apart and we can engage and we could bring more forward. And, it's interesting. People always want to talk to Cleopatra and they want to talk to, like Henry VIII and all kinds of crazy shit like that. And I say, you really want to, why doesn't anyone want to talk to the guy who is just sort of I don't really like the term regular person, but just living as a mainstream life, whatever that was then. Because nobody ever wants to talk to them. So they want to talk all the time.
I can imagine. Yeah.
All the time. Yeah.
I actually think that's who we talk to. when
Mhm.
we're going out and doing this stuff. We
Yeah.
want to talk to them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was doing a meditation recently, and part of it was like kind of one of those kind of download messages, like here's a real something really important for you.
Mhm.
And it was more or less saying you need to talk to more disincarnated, more ghosts, if you will, whatever you want to call them. And I hope that's not derogatory in any way.
Oh no.
And hear their story, tell real ghost stories, because there's something that needs to be said.
Mhm.
And I immediately got this image of a spirit after that, and it was very convoluted, was not at all human looking, as you would picture it. But I knew it to be a human. It consisted of these kind of fabric blocks, making this sort of triangle, if you will, and one block kind of missing in their eyes, one rim glasses, looking out. And they are all the same color, these blocks. They were this kind of blue color.
Mm-hmm.
And not to toot my own horn, I just thought it was a really cool story. I figured out, it made sense to me that this was a nun that wore blue, right? And she had a secret, and she's hiding behind things. And I didn't get more than that. I want to, because I think there might be a really good story that goes with it, but I'm not quite there yet.
We
you know?
talked about this a lot last night.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
About the blue
You know,
nuns, and there really is an order of the blue nuns.
Yes, there really is.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. There's several, actually.
Yes.
And they
I
tend to be dealing with the worst of things, hospice.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They're caretakers of the very sick and the dying, this sort of thing. I have one nun story. Um, it's interesting what I can and cannot see. Well, do and do not see, I suppose. I rarely see nuns, and I think that there's some reason on their side for that. But there is one that I saw for a long time, and she was always crying, and she was kind of young, and maybe in her 40s, and she was always crying. And at one point, I said to her, "You can't be around me anymore if you can't tell me what this is about, because I don't need this." And she went away for a while, and she came back, and she was crying again. I said, "You know the deal." And she said, "All right, I'll tell you." And she got down on her knees and sort of like like the yoga position, downward dog, like that, and she said, I don't know why she did that, but she did. And she said it was all bullshit. And I was like, what was all bullshit? And she said, I gave up my life for an afterlife that doesn't exist.
Oh.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, you have every right to be crying. Because she said she would have rather been a mother, and she would have rather been in a relationship, and that she felt a calling to this thing, and she felt like she had wasted her whole life on it. I think she committed suicide. I'm not sure.
Wow.
Yeah, I think she did.
That's deep. And I imagine a lot of that happens. I mean, I've seen no evidence of any particular religion exactly working out
at all.
But it's like that chaos magic thing, everything and nothing is true.
Yeah.
Right? In a certain way, it might be with that belief system we mentioned earlier. You might see some of that, but it's not really what we write in books.
No, it is. And, I see all kinds of people. I see people from paths of life I would never have expected to see. I see people from all sorts of parts of the world. There is one thing that I never see. I have no idea why. I never see American Indians. I don't know why. I never have. I've never had that experience. I lived, where I lived. I lived, near the hot box swamp. I lived
Triangle.
Yeah, in the Bridgewater Triangle. And I never saw American Indians. I still haven't. As far as I know. I mean, I don't know that everyone I see is or is not, but I've never seen anyone presenting that. And I've stood by the big rock there. Everybody sees them, and I've never seen anything.
Yeah, the ledge that collapsed, right? I think probably in Freetown Forest.
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
And I've never. They just don't cross my radar. I don't know what it is.
Interesting.
Which I think is wonderfully interesting. I mean, I don't have a desire to change that, but it says something. There's a piece of data in there that's very important. I don't even know what it is. But there's a piece of data in there that there's something about a type of person or the DNA of a person that interrupts or proves more connection. And this is interrupted in some way. And that's fine with me, but it's very interesting. that could happen.
It may be a combination of things. It's them and you, and it's just some kind of something between that seems to be stopping it. They certainly do exist in the afterlife.
Oh, absolutely. Lots of other people see them. I'm sure they do. I
It's
don't.
interesting that you haven't, especially living out in this area in particular.
Yeah.
Where we had such a large indigenous population, so much so that they consider the land here to be scarred
Yes.
from King Philip's War.
Yeah.
That's the main reason for,
Yes.
the Water Triangle as a thing.
Oh, I thought if I was going to see them
marketing.
anywhere, I would have seen them there, but I did not. And I respect that. Maybe they don't want to be part of this the way that I communicate, and good for them. If anybody who pulls away from somebody else has a reason. And I know it's not from my side because I don't have a particular feeling about it. And this is something I would like to talk about, even on a show with somebody who is an American Indian. I would like very much to find somebody who knows the history of their experience, of their family, of their ancestry, and bring them on my show. So if there's anybody out there who's an American Indian who wants to
we have an indigenous shaman that's in our audience tonight.
Yeah.
I'll introduce you to. His name is Brandon, and he's
I would
quite a
love,
guy.
I would love to talk to him and see what his theory is, or if he has one, or just a feeling, or just wants to talk to me and see if there's a feeling that he gets. It's interesting.
Excellent. A couple of questions we'll hit, and I know we want to get into your latest project and your show, and we have some of your cohorts sitting backstage waiting very patiently for us.
Some of the crew is in the house tonight.
The crew.
Yeah.
So, all right. The first question came from Robert Green, and he says,
Robert.
That were caregivers, teachers, mothers. Have you introduced those types of disincarnate to the children? So, like, if you're come across a spirit child, do you try to introduce a motherly figure to them?
It's not something I've tried that on, I would say, 4 occasions that I remember, and the children will not participate. They don't want anything to do with it. The adult, the caregiver. I had the opportunity once to be able to see the mother and the child, and they had died separately. The child died, and some of these children are very young, so you would think that it would be easy for them, but there's some kind of mechanism. This child was less than 8 years old, is my guess, little boy, and his mother, he died, and his mother killed herself 3 years later.
Oh, jeez.
And I saw them separately for a while, and I didn't know that they were connected. They were both talking to me a lot. And the little boy was very, very like playful and all sorts of things. He had died in an accident, I found out later from the mother. And I don't think he suffered. So maybe there was a lack of experience there. And he seemed to have had a nice life. But she suffered terribly, because she was in such pain that she took her own life. And I said to her, she said, "My son can't see me. We can both see you. My son can't see me." And I tried to make that happen. And she could see him after a little while, but he couldn't see her. And he was like, no, like this. And I don't think that she was bad to him or anything. I think that children in their disincarnate state create a real template of what it is. They decide where they are. They act the same way. They loop constantly. Children loop much more than adults. They'll be in a state of play that you see over and over and over again. They'll come back to me and say exactly what they said the last time. They do a lot of that. They're much less conversational and much more reliving moments of their lives.
That's so interesting. I love that. I mean, another question. Great answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brunel asks, I have a question, and there's always talk about these different types of demons or evil creatures, but I rarely hear about different types of good creatures.
Good question, Bob. In my work, we have attending demons, which are demons that we can trust and build relationships with. I have a theory. Maybe it's more than a theory, but let's just say that for now, that all demons eat and consume chaos because they have a desire to become tangible. This is what my attending demons tell me, that the constant movement of the dust that they exist in, which is what they refer to it as, can solidify over time and give them some kind of tangibility where they can touch or hold, or even more than that, and become physical entities. And my attending demons, 1 through 9, and 4 others, is how I refer to them. I would be dead without them. I'm 100% sure of that. I've been in exorcism situations. I've been in situations where I'm clearing something out of a house. I've had things thrown at me. I've been bitten. I've been burnt. I've been shoved downstairs. If it wasn't for number 9, he's my sort of bodyguard, I'd be dead now. I have no doubt about it. So I define that as a good guy. Also, I use my attending demons I send them places to assist. Like someone in my class was in the middle of a terrible storm once, and I sent 8 because 8 has an ability to sort of cover a surface. So they're working demons, and they're good guys if you think of it that way. And I think that they have to have some, I don't know if the word is compassion or desire for communication or something, to want to be attending demons. They have a higher intellect, or they have a higher capability for intellect. Now, remember, we're using human words to discuss something that came from like a crazy moment or a moment of sorrow. So there's a little bit of a learning curve to understand how to use the language. But they do serve, and they do get in relationships. And if that's a definition of good, but in life, you always hear about the bad guys. So there's probably tons of demons who are doing great things.
It's like Hollywood kind of thing, right? Right. I think a lot of the purpose of sorcery in general is to do good things for yourself, oftentimes, right? Most magicians that I've met that were really good at their craft didn't really, spend their time just hating on everybody. They were trying to improve their lives. So, we got to make this good.
Yeah, you don't get in this to have less, ever. Like I always say to my students, why would you get in this to have less? It's about
you may have been wronged in some way, and you need some sort of protection. And when you talk about protection, you're talking about a pretty serious, strong protection.
Oh, yeah.
Not necessarily the thing of, well, I'm putting a circle around myself and I'm good now. It's more like, no, I'm going to cripple the thing that is trying to cripple me before it does. Mm-hmm. And that sort of thing, which is just, that's like martial arts or anything else, right?
Yeah. Rick, my co-host, is a self-protection expert, instructor, those kinds of things. And we've had conversations about that and what it means to be safe. And in my world, what it means to be safe is I must be flanked by my attending demons all the time. I mean, I am right now in this moment. If they had a sensation that there was something that was going to happen in this interaction, they'd shut me down from this. And I have no doubt they're tremendously talented at managing electricity. Yeah,
and it would be like almost like a ward in a way, right?
Yes, yeah.
So let's talk about this wonderful page and website you have open over here that is really got a lot to offer.
Yes,
and bring those guys on, and we're going to talk about just that.
We have Rick, and we have my fantastic producer Vito, who is the technical mind behind the whole thing. And he, without him, I'd still be trying to fuss around with Blog Talk Radio, which would not let us play. They reduced our bandwidth. I'm clearly on a list somewhere, and that's totally fine with me. Is that the great Rick Weisbrot?
It is. Hey, Chris.
I see, Rick. Hey, good evening.
It's wonderful to finally meet you in person.
Nice to be seen.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. And we were on a show with you and Sorceress a couple weeks ago. It's titled Trauma, is on her page. And we were talking about just trauma in general, which was just so interesting because your shows are not like all the other shows. It's not a straight up interview, kind of like what we're doing now, but we'll go in different directions. It's more like, hey, let's just have a conversation about this topic. And boy, the things that come out, so interesting.
What's interesting to me is like people fill in gaps. So Sorceress says, attending demons, the best I can do is to teach you how to be your own bodyguard. And it's interesting that Sorceress and I are so close for so many years, And
A lot of years, like 150, I think.
150, 160, 70. I mean, I see energy. I mean, I deal with energy, but I don't see what she sees.
Mhm.
But it's like I said, people filling in gaps for, my work is with people to defend their own energy. You've got to become your own attending demon, so to speak.
Well, the thing about Rick is if you are in his life and he cares about you and you are somewhere together, you are safe. I can tell you that because he and I love each other, endlessly. We're like brother and sister. We always have been. And I feel like he has an eye that I don't need to have, and that my eye is different. Like I'll see the dead, I'll see demons, but he'll see the guy 2 blocks away who has a bad idea on his mind. And
This
it's
is
it's
true.
so he's so good at it. It's so amazing. I don't know if that came from some seed in you that you always had and you had to develop, or it came from, we talked about trauma and stuff.
Well, trauma's a good one, but I
Yeah.
think you either go one way or the other. So for me, it was hypervigilance,
Yeah.
but also how to teach other people how and you don't have to go through trauma to obviously learn it, but to impart it to people who are looking for protection and to find the best ways of working with them because everybody responds differently. You can be a drill sergeant to somebody, but other people you have to kind of coax it out and find out what's going to bring it out so they don't freak out. So everybody's got a different way.
Well, one of the things that I love about the way Rick works is very much like we was just saying, but I'd like to expand on that a little bit, is that you can be an 80-year-old woman who has been assaulted and is trying to come back out into the world and just walk down the block. Or you can be an MMA fighter and this guy can up your game. I mean, that's just true. He can find like the spot in you, the speck in you that can hear him and he can understand what your needs are so that you can look at your world in a safer way. I mean,
The,
this
the,
is
the
just
other thing this is going to add to that is that unlike MMA,
yeah,
it's if you're being attacked, it's not a sport, right?
right,
There's no informed consent. I agree too.
yeah,
You just happen to be the wrong place at the wrong time, whatever. And it's how do you respond to that? So it's a different mindset.
yeah. But you've always just had this. I think this is really. I hate the word gift. I don't really use it, but it's like an innate thing for you. It's in your DNA.
At this point, it's certainly I know it is.
Yeah, it's a real specialty, um, and very much like what I do is such a specific specialty. What Rick does is such a specialty because he does it his way.
You know what it is? It's like CPR. It's a skill. You hope you never need it, but
Yeah,
it's nice to know that you have it on that day if you actually do. And that's why I call it almost like CPR because it shouldn't be a stressed out thing learning it.
yeah, right. But you came on this show and got sort of smacked around, not physically, but sort of smacked around by people doing all kinds of crazy stuff. On our show, things are coming into Rick's life that are not part of his regular day to day. I would say that. And what's fascinating with me is about the way we work together is what he does always becomes valid in the conversation. And that is that's incredible talent.
It's an insane chemistry on your show, and
Yes.
it's so good.
With all of
It
you.
really
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
And of
Yeah.
course, the points you're making about being owning your dominion, right? I mean, it's got to be something for that to have that confidence and lack of fear,
Mhm.
right? And what is it you say about fear, Sorceress? You have
Yes.
a great quote about this.
I have a great definition of fear. Fear is inconvenience and not knowing what to do next. And understand that I use the word inconvenience in a very broad and true way. Inconvenience could be the bus is late or someone's just stabbed you. Or someone's coming at you and there's danger. So once you hit inconvenience, what gets triggered is that now everything else you had planned going forward is not going to be that same way. Your plan is now altered and you have to figure out what to do next. And I have asked people for decades to tell me something that doesn't fit into that. And it really hasn't happened.
It's speaking of supernatural things. And I've told this before. There's a lot of people that I've trained for whatever reason seem to imbue me with like supernatural powers, which I don't have. And what I tell them is that the only thing I can guarantee you is I will act if I have to.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to turn out. You never know.
But you'll
And
stand
that's
up.
that's why I try to get other people to do it. It's the fear is in the anticipation. It's not in the action.
Yeah.
You just have to do. And that's the one thing that I train people is you'll act. That's as good as it gets.
But Chris, that's why I asked him to be my co-host.
Oh, that's right.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
there's a conversation on chi that we need to probably get to a little bit, and maybe the subconscious and timelines really.
Right.
But I want to introduce Vito as well, who's been
Hi.
very patient, waiting
Vito.
in his window. Hey, Vito, how are
Hi,
you?
how are you?
Welcome to
Welcome.
Bigfoot and the Bunny.
Thank you.
So none of it's possible without Vito. Without Vito, we'd be sitting on the phone and talking to each other and having a really good time, and nobody else would hear it. And I have to say that this man, let me explain something about Vito. Vito's like, oh no, not the compliments, but it's true because we went through hell to put this thing together. Chris, we talked to you about it. We tried all of the services. We tried, and everywhere we tried, somebody was like, oh, that's that blood sorceress. It's not going to happen, but thanks for playing. And every time we hit a bump, Vito's like, yeah, let's just build it. Like, okay. Right, Vito? You can talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, we had to build the whole thing pretty much from scratch. I mean, we ran into problems in every part of this process, starting, from email to, creating the platform on our own servers. And we had to learn about everything about, what servers we need, how much processing power we need, what audio streams we have to use, at what codecs, and we had to do all this stuff on our own. And I didn't know anything; I had to learn it all. But but I would say that compressed sorcery process within a project that you're designing, and I think it's for me being a sorcerer that's an advancement because I can put like the rubber on the road and say, I'm gonna allow these autonomic sorcery processes to kick in when they are required, and I'm gonna put in a focused effort into having an intellectual focus on what has to be accomplished, and I will get to the end product. And I will get to the end product in a non-negotiable way. It means I'm going to have it no matter what.
Yes.
And and through all the sorcery that sorcerers taught me, it's utilizing fury and focused fury to make sure things happen and make sure people do the shit they got to do to make this happen. So so that's kind of a core of this whole process on how it happened and how it evolved. And we have an end product right now, which we're very proud of.
Yeah. And you guys tried out video for the first time this week.
Yes.
Right. And now mining, we're using something that's already kind of pre-built. It's called StreamYard, and a lot of people use that. But you're hosting your own servers. You've got your applications, and there was a lot to figure out to make that work properly.
Yes.
Yeah. And then we have to think about scaling and growing big, and we have to make sure that everyone's happy at the end of the line. And we've been doing that very well. So.
Oh yeah, it's the kinds of things that happen and the way that we deal with them are really amazing. I mean, I have to just tell this story, Vito. When Vito took my beginner class and the Wednesday night core class was closed, that's it. Nobody was coming in. I had decided I had finally gotten to that group of people, and that was it. And he was saying, no, I'm going to take that class. And sending me emails with such profound questions. I mean, such well thought out, constructed questions. Just after the beginner class, I was like, yeah, we're going to do it. And like a hand in the glove, this man fits into sorcery. It's unbelievable. And everything that we do together, we operate on Fury. We operate on a process called CANT, which is I can't have this happen. And it's more than just language. It's an absolute statement. So when you understand how to use that particular process in sorcery, then we get where we're going all the time. And also Vito has really learned to work with me and my and my moments when it comes to, like, he'll create something about the whole thing and I'll say, yeah, I hate it. Like, oh, okay. But now he just says to me, I want to show you something. Tell me if you hate it. So it works out really well. We have a real way of clearing things out fast and getting on to what's
Yeah,
next.
we don't compromise. We build upon something and find ways to improve something. So we don't cut corners. We add to the product which we want to design and present to our clients. So that's why this is really fun to work with Sorceress, because she understands how to get big projects done and what it takes to get big projects done.
Mhm.
So I'm really enjoying that because she thinks big. She doesn't think about small things.
There are time for small things.
And a lot of this like circles around knowing what you want, right? I know this has always been my biggest stumbling block because I'm always undecided about certain things that maybe I want in my life or whatever. And when you apply things like sorcery magic to these things, it's really good to know what your intent's going to be. And certainly it's worked out for things like employment and, without getting too much into the details, because I don't know if they're work to me, but, blood sorcery is a very valid technique.
Yeah.
It is
to
a very
get a
valid.
job or doing other things or putting together a server situation where we're going to make this project work and get it off the ground and make sure all our needs are met. It's fantastic.
Well, when I first contacted Rick, I remember saying to him, hey, I'm going to do this thing and I want you to come on the radio with me. And then a couple of months went by and I didn't have to call him 6 times and say, we're almost ready to start. He knew that if I had said I was doing this thing, it was going to turn up. And then once we started, Rick just went through all the changes with us. We had originally started with a very different focus. I thought it was going to be with a particular person who was also in the group and that sort of thing. And the more we look at it, the more we realize where we must go. Where we must go is to look at more intellectual pursuits regarding the things that I do, regarding all these sorts of things, having these relationships with scientists and people who deal with cultures and people who deal with, like, for example, I have a real desire to find a cartologist, somebody who makes maps of places that are like jungles, this kind of thing, and figure out how they do that, how they connect this idea of these grand spaces to something that has to be small and somebody else can read. This is fascinating to me. So I'm looking for somebody in that business, somebody who does like maps of jungles, this kind of thing. We're going to move forward in ways that are very different than when we first began, where I thought it would be sort of a lighter thing with a sorcery component. But now I would really like it to be something that we talk to people who have great skills and would like to talk to me and talk to Rick and talk to Vito and whoever else we bring on the show and find out where we all have something that we can add. I think it's going to be a tremendous new direction and, where we were going anyway. That's how I feel about it.
It sounds like you're bringing a lot of the understanding of one's environment, history, and future
Yes.
really kind of on the table, as opposed to just self-needs. And, when we say things like, all right, sorcery to fulfill our intentions, there is a use of spirits in this, a use of disincarnate, of non-human entities, more than just say your will of, I just want to do this. It's all kind of interrelated, right?
It is interrelated. Yeah, it is absolutely interrelated. And did you just hear something in the background? Does anybody else hear
Yeah,
that?
I did hear.
All right, I can speak on that. I have a relationship with a particular disincarnate whose name I very rarely say because I just don't, but I'm sure he would like me to because he is very much like me as an egomaniacal individual. And no, because I really am, and it's fine with me. But I am not convinced that he was actually a true human being when he was alive and on this planet. And when I talked to him about it, he's not really sure. It's like asking someone what they weren't. How would they know? He came through some physical body and he existed in a profound way, and he impacted a lot of people. And that person is Rasputin. And I spent 5 years trying to get this man to say one word to me. And, my family sort of jokes with me about it because they said I did wish boards. I did not. I had a painting of him. I had several paintings of him. I allowed a space for him. I did everything I could to get him to feel like he could come into the space. And then he just stalked me for a while. He was around. His energy was around. I could see him. I could even smell him. And now he's an integral part of what I do. And he, to me, the reason I brought this up, he represents stamina because of the many ways that they tried to kill him. And that is a 3D print. We do a thing in sorcery called a 3D print where we hold something and we see it in a certain way and we embed it. And we allow it to be part of our physicality as well as our intellect. And he, to me, was the embodiment of that. So now I work with him quite a bit. So yes, he does have a lot of input. When in those moments when I go, oh, fuck it. It's like the third service that's pushed us off and 8 banks. And how many of those do we go through? We're fighting for the paywall and all of this madness. And Vito's like, okay, let's tear it down and start again. And Rick's like, how's it going? Oh, we still and I sit with Rasputin, and he said to me, they tried to kill me 5 ways. Should just focus and keep going. And it's not like a pep talk. It's like I can feel the force, the poisoning, the bludgeoning, the shooting, the drowning. And then when he came to the surface, somebody weighted him down again. I mean, it was really 5 efforts to kill him. So that plays a part in my stamina.
It makes a lot of sense. If you're trying to write a book, maybe you want to visit the grave of an author you respect.
Correct. Correct. You want to visit the grave of an author who had trouble finishing things. That's kind of, more you want to find someone whose conflict is similar to yours. And that's what works best. I mean, you could go to the grave of authors, but if you can find one who writes in the type of thing that you want to create, or you find someone who grew up in a way similar to yours, these kinds of connections make a huge difference. And asking them to offer their energy, which is really, if I say to another human being, send me some energy, I have an understanding of what that means. If you say to the disincarnate, send me some energy, then they can hover over you in a way, and they can blanket your project, which is really wonderful.
And that presents an opportunity you may not have in life. If I wanted to, go hang out with Stephen King right now, there's a good chance I'd be escorted off the grounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's true. He's not worth it.
Be like, get out of here, Chris.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
You can't do this. Where, in a state of, somebody like, I don't know, Mark Twain, whatever I'm talking about off the top of my head, is that, ability exists. So that is something to think about.
I find that this struggling and disincarnate, whatever their story was, is transferable to help you understand what your struggling is. That I see a lot of.
Our friend Emery Young says, hey, do you find it is a lot more about the energies than the labels?
Oh yeah. I don't even understand the labels. I don't really subscribe to that. People say spirits, ghosts. I don't know what it is. I know that people were alive and they're dead and they talk to me. I know that there are demons that I have relationships with. I know that I am a very tiny person in a very big world, and that there's probably dozens of other types of entities that I don't see. I have no sensation that I know everything. I don't really have much, and this is, everybody's going to go, ha ha ha, but I don't really have much of a sensation that I know anything. I mean, I just do what I do. I'm extraordinary at it because it's in me. This I know, but I don't know the answers. I don't know why sometimes I try to talk to a disincarnate and they just don't show up. I don't know why. How would I know that? If you're waiting for someone and they don't show up, you don't know why they didn't. So the relationships are quite similar, but people need to relax a little bit about the labels, about whether people are calling something a ghost or a spirit or an entity or shadows, or skinwalkers or whatever it is that people use or talk about, or aliens. I have no right to know what's real and what's not, except that which I encounter.
It actually becomes a job to
Yeah.
try to identify all these entities and look at different aspects of them. You're not integrating the process into life. You're wasting your energy. So so what's and you're wasting your time. And if you're going to waste your time, then if that's your intention, then obviously that's a choice.
Rick, you're around a lot of language now that you haven't been around before. How's
It's
that
true.
going?
It's true, but it's a very similar thing to, let's say, if someone is blocking my path,
Mm-hmm.
I go one way and they move blocking my path, and then I go the other way and they move and they block my path. I say, how much more information do I need to figure out I have a situation that I need to take care of? So,
Wow. Yeah.
it's the language. The language is speaking. I don't need any more information. You're a problem. So it's different, but it's similar, which is, I think, where we all connect.
But you also have that ability, though, if it's not a problem, if it's somebody who's coming to you with something pleasing.
Well, hey, pleasure is great, right?
Yeah.
Pleasing is great.
Yeah. But you do have that. You know when somebody's coming to you with an intent, or just something nice or something simple. You're also really good at seeing that. I don't know if you're really good at seeing that.
Maybe, but I what I teach people, though, is the ability to go from 0 to 100 like that.
Yeah.
You can you learn how to get to a 10. So if you need to turn the meter down, you can. But if you never get to 10, you'll never be able to get there when you need to.
So it's about still maintaining some ability to control yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. Not everybody is a threat. Well, let me rephrase. No, you can't be hypervigilant all the time and live a happy life.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. Hypervigilance is an interesting thing because people who want to learn to be necromancers, and it's very difficult to teach when you have never had to learn it. And I say this a lot to my students. Very much of what I do, I did not have to learn. I just have to acknowledge. So I have to find very specific ways to teach some of the things that I teach, because I am sharing with them natural ability. But they go into hypervigilance when people are trying to see the dead. Every moth that flies past starts to be like, did you see that? Did you see that? So if you're somebody who's trying to develop a necromancy skill, one of the things you should do is relax and remember that they are humans, and humans will talk to you if you are in some kind of way approachable.
I love that. And it's why we get into this stuff. But yet so often, I know we've been guilty of it ourselves. When the phenomena actually occurs where now the physics don't make sense and you're experiencing something very, very real, it's frightening. It's not always intended to be, I think, from their point of view. But it can be frightening, and it's good to be able to take a breath. All right, let me think about this before I react. Not, necessarily go overboard and go, oh my God, it's a demon and it wants to eat my soul.
Yeah, no.
Which I think a lot of people do, right?
A lot of
people
do that.
Hey, I'm going to go on paranormal investigations, 100 of them. And when something actually happens, they run out of the house screaming. And I go, no, that's what you came here for.
Just because it's a demon doesn't mean it wants to eat your soul, because it probably doesn't know what a soul is. You have to remember what's going on. There's a story recently I noticed there's a lot of press on of somebody a family saw something in their backyard after the lights fell down. I mean, are you familiar with it?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That was Vegas. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You have any thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, I think we both do. Chris has been following it even more than I have.
Tell me your thoughts.
There's a meteorite, right, in the
Yes,
video.
I think it's a meteorite that came
You can
down.
see.
Yeah.
That was what the light was.
Yeah.
However, what they saw in their backyard, it could have been their subconscious, something coming into their subconscious. I feel that maybe there really was some kind of entity back there.
Mhm.
Hmm.
That was
Well, we also don't know what meteorites mean to other entities.
true.
It could be
True.
something- it could be the symbol of a gathering. It could be anything. We don't know. There's so much tiny data. Look, in your day, if you go to your table and have dinner with your family, your construct of that is completely different than somebody else's. Everything has all these tiny components. So for us to say, oh, it's aliens, it's not aliens, it couldn't be aliens, all these kinds of things, I feel like we don't have any right to make those decisions. It's just every day something else shows up. Some days my whole life is so packed with the disincarnate that I have to say to my attending demons, step in, take the noise down, push them back because they can do that. And there are some days where it's just a few people walking through. You
Mm.
can't over understand.
Right. It can just rock your world no matter what. Things can happen, like we can talk about apports and apportations, which
Yeah.
just it makes no sense at all to logical minds
Right.
that something can be pulled out of literally thin air and dropped in your lap. There's so many reports of these sort of things. Just like things go missing, they can reappear. They can be put in front of you. They may even have a different composition than before they left.
Of course.
We found that in our own experience that our ears as microphones could be used to hear something very clearly that does not end up on the tape
Mhm.
or recordings, and
Yes.
if you will.
Yes.
And it's absolutely mind-blowing when that happens. Like, we literally had something yell at us and jumped in the air and
It's
not
only picked up on one recording, and
wasn't really there in the recordings.
mm-mm.
So
I'm curious if those
how does
sound
that work?
effects show up on your recordings.
What?
Like,
Yeah,
I
it
don't
wasn't
know
picked
what
up on any of the recordings that
Right,
we had,
right.
recorders that we had going on, right?
Yeah, it just wasn't even there. But we
And it was
heard it.
loud.
We jumped. And so what does that mean? All right. So we can have an impression from the other side, if you will, of something. And totally like a person might see an apparition or something like that. Nobody else sees it. There is no, by our rules of science, way to record it. And we've got Avi Loeb out in the, who
It's off
from
the
Harvard
coast
University, professor. He's
Yep.
out, running the Galileo project right
off
now.
of the coast of Papua New Guinea, and they actually just found a wire that is not. We can't reproduce that we know of
The materials,
the materials, but he's out there.
but he's out there looking for what? Some
Interstellar space debris that came down in 2014, and he finally got funded and everything, and they're out there now.
Mhm.
And yeah,
like what is it called? The large object that went by?
Oumuamua, but this
Oumuamua.
is not Oumuamua.
It's not
This is
Oumuamua, but it's
something
very
different.
similar
Yes.
to Oumuamua in that it came from outside our solar system and crashed in the ocean in 2019 or 14. And he's been tracking it all along. So he's finally getting out on a boat and they're trying to dig it up. They're finding stuff that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And, it's hard to get that crossover, though, with today's science. That's where I'm going with this.
Right.
Versus what our realities are. They can
I just wanted to mention, Rick has an appointment that he's got to get to. So I'm going to say goodnight to him. He's, he said, I know he has to be off by 9:15, which it is now. So I'm going to say goodnight to him. Thank you.
My disincarnate mother is looking for me.
You don't want that to happen.
No, I don't. Kristen, so nice to see you.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to meet you.
Thank you for
finally,
joining
Chris.
us.
Vito.
Bye, Rick.
Great. Thank you.
See you later, Rick.
Okay.
Tomorrow. Okay.
Good night.
Okay. Thank you. Cool. Yeah.
And Rick, it shows how well-rounded your show is, right?
Yeah.
And we've got to put the plug out a couple ways here. Some people only hear this. I know in the ticker we've got your web address, but how do people find it? I'm not wrapping things up yet, but I wanted to put it out.
SorceressCagliastro.com. That website is, although it has a few other things on it, and we're actually streamlining it now over this next week. That is really the way to find the show. There's a couple of free shows to listen to. We are a subscription service. We have built into the platform now 8 shows per month, which is kind of tremendous. We're going to have on a lot of people who do very interesting things. We will occasionally be a video show, if so, on Tuesdays. And I still do 2 deep dive sorcery shows during the month, the second and fourth Thursday of the month. So there's something for anyone who wants to be stimulated, intrigued, poked at, and have their thoughts maybe scrambled a little bit so they can see new ways to see things. That's the way to find it. We are a subscription. We offer a month to month, and we also offer a 6 months for the cost of 5. So we definitely have ways to do it. I made sure the amount of the subscription would be accessible. It's $15 a month. We don't do donations. We don't do anything like that. This is a serious professional operation that we have had to do this way. And we're excited about having it funded by people listening to it. And if somebody's interested in coming on, then just there's a contact page, or you can reach me at Sorceress Cagliastro at sorceresscagliastro.com, or sorceresscagliastro@gmail.com, or Vito at sorceresscagliastro.com. And we're definitely open to people self-pitching. Come on, let's talk to people who do things. And I don't know everyone. Nobody knows everyone. And anybody who's interested in being on the show, come and tell me why. I'd love to hear it.
We can definitely help you with a little of that.
Absolutely.
And we were proud to be on it ourselves.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Right.
We had a great time, and it was a wonderful concept that we were trying to, say it was something totally different than what we're used to. So
right, instead of saying the paranormal, we talked about trauma in general and how it might affect your lives. And I love that you can do that. These kind of culturally relevant things that apply to everybody is applicable in so many directions.
It actually helps.
A couple of real quick things that were said out in the audience. George asked, do they ever interfere with your electronics trying to get your attention? Absolutely. It's ridiculous. We have a recorder that has been touched so many times, and it'll do the same thing. It's just overdriven where it's not. It tells you if it's being overdriven. And when things happen, we know if we start seeing that light just suddenly for no reason showing it's in overdrive, we're going to play back that recording. We're going to get all kinds of distortions and voices and things. And what is your experience in this, guys?
Vito, do you have experiences in that area, like where the electronics have gone crazy while we're working?
Well, I had things break, like some servers would break, but I would install protection for them and redirect the energy to something else. So things like that do happen. Sometimes there's a lot more chaos than it's accounted for due to unforeseen circumstances of what we have to deal with. But we tend to redirect that energy towards things that we find unwelcoming to us.
I have 2 things. Oh, sorry, I thought you were done. Go ahead.
So that's how we deal with this. I don't particularly indulge in identifying phenomena because I don't have that much time to do that. But I do indulge in redirecting the energy to something else.
We use any interruption as a battery, and if something is interrupting us, that means, look at this brilliant moment. There's extra energy, and we harness that, and we use it in various ways that we perform sorcery, and use it to feed something else or to solve something else. But I will tell you that when I'm teaching, and every one of my students has seen this so many times, if we are talking about demons, we'll get bumped off twice. There'll be all kinds of static. You'll hear voices, this kind of thing. This goes on every time I do a complex demon class, every single time. And sometimes it's on recordings and sometimes it's not.
We've gotten some pretty amazing EVPs doing this show with the background noise.
Yes.
Things are unmistakably voices, swearing at us, swearing at our guests.
Talking to each other. There's been more than one.
Conversations amongst themselves. And you go, well, the wire's crossed, but it's coming out of a cloud. Doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, I think when we work with demons, and we have, let's say, a class on demons come because we have to interact with them. So there has to be some kind of a way to engage with them. But that's the only purpose. But if we use the demons within the working environment or within something that we need to accomplish, the energy is more focused.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm looking at some of the things your guests are saying. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of interaction and a
Yeah.
really great group of people out here.
Yeah.
Our friend Philip asks, are the sounds, voices, telepathy, and not actually sounds? Well, that's a very good question. You know, your perception is altered. You perceive it as sounds. Is it really sound waves coming across? Well, I would tend to think not, right? It's like a clairaudient experience. For the example that we gave, Kristen and I, you know, in that example, by the way, she had these headphones on plugged into a recorder. Everything she was hearing was coming through that recorder.
Wow.
Something yelled at us and made us literally jump up in the air and hear us.
We have an
What the
entire
heck?
clip of this because
Yeah.
it scared the hell out of me, and I said something.
And it wasn't in the recorder that she was holding.
Nope.
So,
Yeah, I
how
think
do
you can
you
go
hear
either way, though. I think you can go either way. I mean, because I'll hear things that 3 other people will hear, but I'm also surrounded by people who have that kind of training and understand what they're hearing. So that's pretty interesting. And then some of it, I think, does just come through like a plug-in in my mind, that sort of thing. Like I have an ability to hear it in my head, but I think often things are coming just right through and people can hear them. I mean, we had a little bit of that tonight. So it doesn't surprise me when, or I'll notice that I'll hear it and then my dogs will look around. So they're hearing it too. One of my dogs has taken to staring at a particular spot in my house and going like, of course, Vito, it's Hazel. Who's been, he knows my dogs. And she'll like do this and then she'll go like, oh, it's okay now, and lay down. And it's been going on for a while now. So whatever she's seeing is in her level of communication.
And it's also very interesting how when we work together, we get interrupted.
Yeah.
Sometimes by a distant card or something that adds up to our work.
Yeah.
So a lot of times what we do is there's a lot of unseen things that are interacting with us, but we tends to be somewhat part of our work. So
it's always usable. All the energy is usable. Everything feeds into the battery.
Darren says, I'm loving our new show. Super interesting topics. And since it's her own platform, she's not restricted as to what she can say. So very real and organic. I enjoy the episodes very much.
Thank you, Darren.
We would agree.
Darren's gonna be on the show soon. We're gonna do a show with Darren on the science on the sorcery of scent, because Darren is a perfumer. So he's
Right.
gonna go on the show.
Oh,
Thank
that's right. Yes.
Yes, I've told you about
Yes.
this because I think it's so interesting.
We're gonna
And
schedule that
everybody-
this summer sometime.
Senses, right?
What?
It's one of your senses.
Yes.
I have a very limited list of them as human beings. To be able to alter that in some way is a powerful thing.
My thing is the thing with smell. I love all different kinds of what do we call them? Aromatics. Yeah, I love all kinds of smells.
Aromas.
Thank you. Just
Yeah.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
I need those in my life, and I just have to have them.
Mhm.
Chris knows, and it's a big thing to me. Yeah,
Well, ancient civilizations were very interested in aromatherapy. What we now call aromatherapy. They were very interested in the importance of that sense. And and the more, I'm not one of those people who bashes modern life, but the fact is that the simpler things are to get, the less astute you have to be in your other senses. And this is what goes on. I was reading a study that someone was doing about how animals can decide whether meat has gone too bad for them to eat, how things are rotted too far, or there's something in them. And they did these experiments where amongst coyotes, and there are a few different kinds of animals, they put out meat that was just old and then meat that had bacteria in it, and they noticed that the animals stayed away from certain meats. And I think that that's how humans used to live. We didn't go to the market, get something from one refrigerator and slide it into another. So we've lost very much of these kinds of senses that are truly necessary for survival.
I think we need to evolve new ones. We need that sixth sense. We need these things that are there.
Yeah.
We need to bring them about because it is changing, right? So we're no longer stranded on the island and need to come up to something in its most basic sense of scent, like, okay, that's antelope crap, and this is, an orange.
Right.
We need to know the difference. Like, do I eat this or that? Which, of course, is why we have
Yeah.
that ability, right?
Or we can up our requirements and say that we want to achieve these greater things, and then we're going to be in that situation, So
Yeah, true. Yes.
Choice
Yeah.
development. Choice development. I think it's a real thing, and I think that if you are willing to work very hard, choice development is available.
And complexities of the senses, really. Learning those complexities. So it's not just, yes or no. There's more there, more available.
Can I plug an upcoming episode?
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
Next Tuesday we have Banu Reynolds, who is a stylist, fashion stylist, and a fashion historian that I've known for a long time, and she's going to be talking about the way that fashion affects relationship and how people see each other, and how it's a front line for providing a message. And I think that's going to be very interesting. We have a couple of really good shows coming up. In July, we're going to do a show about cults.
Oh,
And-
yes. Very cool
Have a
topic.
few- yeah, and it seems that there's we will have somebody who's left a cult on that show. And that's going to be very exciting. And all kinds of things like that are going on. And the deep dive sorcery that we're going to do this coming Thursday, next Thursday, is something I haven't talked about before. And it's about creating physical manifestation of an object in a certain way. I'm not going to get too much into it right now, so that you have trapped that object and can play with it and utilize its energy in some kind of specialized way. I'm very
I
excited.
look forward to that.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
That sounds great. And I
Wonderful.
left Anne's comment about her garden, and she's talking
Yes.
about the sense of smell still, because Anne grows more than vegetables in her garden, but I'm not going to say more than that. But
Nope.
she may live states away, but I could probably open a window and smell Anne's garden from here. And we like that as well. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Fair enough.
I think that's wonderful. And speaking of things like that, you've sold dolls from time to time.
Oh, yes.
Really, really cool. And I'm not sure if you have any for sale right now,
Yes.
but they are not your average, quote unquote haunted doll. There's a lot that goes into these things. And of course, the idea of having a consciousness in some sort of inner matter speaks to things like panpsychism and animism. And what are your thoughts on that? And what goes into the dolls a little bit?
The dolls get made when the dolls decide to get made. It is really a partnership. I collect antique porcelain dolls. I have pieces of dolls. I have whole dolls. From the point A to B where a doll gets made, it's very rarely the pieces of the original body. There's a lot of cutting things up and seeing what desires to be with what, based on what is going to go into it. The dolls are basically possession vehicles or some other kind of vehicle for another ability. They can have sorcery in them. They can have demons in it. They can be a way for the disincarnate to come into them and to into a new space in a way that looks dissimilar to any other entry you've ever seen. I also did a series of dolls that were bulls, and I directed them directly at masculine energy, and they're now all going to their homes. The dolls take 6 months to a year to make, each one of them. And sometimes I have a doll that I've had for years and years and years, and it just hasn't happened yet. And then I pick that doll up and I know exactly what it's for. Of all the dolls I've made, there's my own doll, Tanis, is what really started it. And people have seen her move. She's completely animated. She's quite special. She's a very arrogant individual, and she'll push the other dolls off the shelf, and I'll hear them crash to the ground. And I finally have I have figured out the dolls that she will stay on the shelf with. So for right now, providing there's no other negative interaction between them, we're okay. But I of all the dolls I've made, there are a few that really stand out. there's two that have gone to a student, friend, client in England, and they interact with the dolls, other dolls that she has, and she's writing. I think she's doing her doctorate on the dolls and this on the work that on living with them and what they've done in her life and all that sort of really deep revelation. And then there's another doll, Mimi, who, when I made Mimi, I had her, the physical doll of her, for a very long time, maybe 10 years, 12 years. And she's a porcelain, little tiny porcelain doll. She's maybe this big. And I picked her up one day and she just went limp. She was heavily stuffed. Like they're all porcelain, many of them, but the bodies are fabric and they're stuffed. And she just went limp. And I knew exactly what she was. And I worked with her for a little while. And when I created her, she was in a collection of dolls, and I always show the dolls first to people who are collectors. So I did a private thing like this with people who are collectors of my dolls, and there was sort of a gasp. People looked at her and they were like, "Oh, she's not ugly or anything." It just they got it right away, and there was really only one person I felt she should go to, and that person has her now, and she is a full conduit for the discarnate. She makes decisions in the house. She controls the energy. She's quite special and she's quite active. So my dolls, if you're going to bring one of my dolls into your life, be prepared. The male dolls have brought forth some tremendous energy, and there will be more dolls when more dolls are ready to be made. It could be I could start tomorrow. I could start in a year. I don't know. And when I do, I put up a collection and I do a lot of necromancy dolls, a lot of disincarnate dolls. I do possession dolls, but they tell me what they are. And one collection is not all one thing. That's how it works.
Now, one of the things you talk about a lot in your classes is magnetism. And I bring this up because I've sort of borrowed a little bit of that. I'm certainly not trying to steal any tech, but
please.
we use this skull here. He's anatomically correct, although I wish he was a real human skull.
Yes.
He is convenient in that his head pops off, and you'll find a bunch of magnets, very strong magnets inside, as well as crystals and such. And we use this because of the history of skulls through time.
Yes.
I mean, going back to the Babylonians, to Mesopotamia, Sumerian, all used this. Archaeologists are now finding that maybe even hunter-gatherer tribes would remove the heads of people, and you can look at people like John Dee in the Middle Ages.
Oh yes,
taking off heads, and the idea of necromancy, i.e., speaking to the dead, and skulls, has gone hand in hand through millennia, through as long as we've been recording things.
It was the Neanderthals; they had their own burial ground.
Can I add something? Just want to mention that we have, Sorceress wrote the Chaos Sigil book. And and we have an app for it, and it's a very powerful book. I think it's the most powerful book that I have ever seen so far, and I've been doing the different sigils from that book and working with these sigils, and it's been extremely life-changing.
Well, let's segue into that, Vito. So we were talking about the magnets and that sort of thing, and I wondered if they had a role in some of the dolls. Like I know some of these dolls have been in crypts and things of that nature.
Oh yes,
It's a process, like when you say it takes 6 months to make a doll, you're not kidding. There's a lot of things that go into it.
Do
magnets play a role?
They do. Absolutely.
We'll talk about the app. That would be cool.
Many of them have magnets in them. They have or they have iron filings in them, so that they affect magnets and magnets are affected by them. There's a lot of that. Yes, many of them have been in mausoleums for long periods of time, and then taken out and developed further. There's all that sort of thing. Magnets are a big part of my life, and I utilize them both physically in my hands and by the memorization of their sensation. So I don't always have them with me, but I can utilize the sensation of them. And I think that there might be a reason why Vito brought up the chaos book, because he and I talk about chaos and magnets all the time, and how like this sensation of being pushed away and pulled to. So there is definitely a correlation there. But the dolls, keep your eye out. There'll be more dolls. I have 2 sites. I have Cagliastro, the Iron Ring, where I present all of that sort of thing, and that's where any work that I do that is a physical thing that you can purchase or have, and the recordings. I have a recordings library there of many of the classes and sedations that I've taught. And then sorceresscagliastro.com, which will eventually be related to Cagliastro Media, is where you can find the show. So there's 2 things going on all the time. I guess in a perfect world that would be clear, but I don't know that it is, and we do what we can to present it. And the work finds its home, especially the dolls. The dolls find their home.
We have so many different assets right now that Cagliastro Media developed, and these are all available, and really powerful assets. And and so it's a whole second level of exploration into sorcery. Second level, that means it's more power to you.
Mm-hmm. And this is why it's important on the show to start to bring in the guests we've been talking about and see. I want to join my work with other people's work. I don't feel like it operates in a tiny cubby. It could operate anywhere. I want to work with scientists who are looking for something. I'm interested in what divination can do to help them find that particle and this sort of thing. There's so much to be done.
A bit like remote viewing, but maybe more spirit interaction.
Yes, maybe. And maybe more physical interaction. When I do divination, I tend to be doing it more for what's going to happen or where someone who's missing is, this kind of things. These are just categories. But I would like to work with people who are doing things like looking for atomic particles and help them know where to look and see if we can find a language that I can express to them what I'm seeing.
That's why I brought up Avi Loeb earlier, because I think that would be a great partnership.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Let's try.
Brilliant individual, right?
He really is, and so are you. So, yes.
Thank you.
Getting back to what Vito mentioned in the sigils.
Oh, yeah.
For those in our audience that don't understand what a sigil is, or a cult is kind of new to them, maybe you can explain this and the product.
Sure. Sigils are a group of identifying marks that, when they come together, can have a purposeful use in creating a specific outcome. If you thought of them at the end of a telescope, when you were looking through the telescope, then you would be seeing your world through the sigil, and something would be looking back into your eye through the sigil. And that's just an example I give of how the work is done through sigils. We use them in all kinds of ways. We use them in polarities. We use them in our timelines. We use them heavily in blood sorcery. That's a big part of what we do. And they are, they could be endless amounts of sigils. People can draw their own. The ones that are in my books, in 23 sigils, 25 sigils, 29 sigils, and now the Chaos Sigil book of 21 sigils. These are all truly tried and tested. I don't produce sigil books unless the work has proven itself. This one in particular, the Chaos book, is very different. These were painted during chaotic moments. There's big movement in them. You can't reproduce them because you can't redraw them, because even the strokes of the brush have something to do with what's going on in them. They have words scratched into them. They're very complicated, but they are disturbing in a good way. I mean, if you disturb yourself, you can make something happen. And that's really what they do. I'm right now teaching the advanced class some other things that they're capable of that aren't in the books, but this is a tremendous opportunity to shake your life up. It deals with bad behavior and throwing fits and all kinds of things which you should be doing when you're working with sigils.
Yeah, and there's no deities involved per se within that process. It's just you engage directly with the energies that are native to you, and and immediately you get a result. So it's it's like a good plug-in, basically.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm. It is.
there's no conflict. There is no questioning or, you know.
Yeah, I love the idea. It's such a great concept, and certainly there are quite a few of those sigil books you mentioned on the shelves behind us.
Yeah, I was just saying that.
Used to great effect.
Yeah,
You know,
we
and
have a bunch of them.
they aren't just as simple as just drawing the symbol, although it can be that simple, right?
Mhm.
There can be a lot of things that go into them, and
Of course.
kind of the more you know, right?
Yes.
Like the old NBC. Yeah, was it
The more
NBC?
you know.
The more you know. Because there's levels there for advanced students and things to try, and especially when you're talking about things like the boxes and maybe using different materials or timelines even.
Right. The pillars, you mean? We have, so the pillars include so many ways to integrate the rest of the work into it. In the boxes, you can put sigils in the boxes. You can put them in the iron ring. You can use your static practice, which is how you operate moving into your timeline. The polarity work. I mean, if anything is more could be more perfect for sigils than polarity work. I don't know, but blood sorcery, working with discarnate, they transcend all of it. They're a thread through the whole thing.
Blood sounds so scary to a lot of people,
Mhm.
but I mean, if it's something as simple as pricking your finger,
Yeah.
just a tiny death, it's nearly not.
I don't suggest people prick their fingers because it's an oddly painful thing to do and it separates you from your concentration. So I suggest if you're going to harvest to do it from a flat area on your body that the less hair there is, the less tension there is in the skin, and it's easy to do. It may be inside your forearm. Please stay away from your arteries and veins.
Yes.
Right. And you do make a point of that with your students with the arteries and
Yes,
where
always.
they are and how to avoid.
And also you can use your phone because we created an app
Yes.
that that you can use the sigils on the phone.
Right,
So
right.
because you use the phone every day, your phone is part of your life, it's part of your body.
Right.
So why not use it for sorcery?
Right. You can put your blood on the screen of your phone and you can operate that way with the sigils, so that you can carry it around. It's a very interesting use of technology. Yeah. It's
That's
very
amazing.
So blood sorcery is not scary because blood isn't scary, even though every kind of media, every kind of doctrine, every kind of warning in life is telling us that blood is scary. It's not. It's everything that you are. And there are many paths that say, "Oh, don't use your own blood." I've been hearing that for years. But if you have one sword in your pocket, that's it. If you only have one way to do something, that's the way to do it. It's the most powerful way of all. Very clear on that.
That is really cool. So
You don't need to waste your time on any kind of ritual or deity. You just use your blood.
Yeah. What are you gonna say, Chris?
I just think it's really interesting, put in a way that is accessible to so many people.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need a lifetime of practice. I know people like in our age group a lot of times feel a little intimidated because like, oh my God, wasn't born seeing the dogs, and I'm not going to be able to do this. And, it's like a lot, and then wow, I don't have those kind of ET talents, extraterrestrial talents, if you will.
Yeah.
But you can develop these things, right? I mean,
of course you can. Of course you can.
doesn't matter how old you are.
No, it does not. My favorite students are the ones that come to me after 50.
I have to go. So thank you very much.
All right, Vito. We'll talk later.
Talk later.
Vito.
Thank you so much.
Vito, let me just say thank you for everything that you do, because he is an extraordinary partner. We have a lot of businesses together, but what he's done for the radio show is extraordinary, and he's like a fury of being willing to try and get it right until we get what we require. So acknowledgement for Vito.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good evening.
Joining us tonight.
Bye-bye.
Whoops.
He's always very excited about the work. He is.
Yeah.
He does. He looks like Tesla.
Yeah.
I think he's got some pretty big thoughts going on.
That's what it's like. It is exactly like that. I'll say, oh, let's I don't know. Now we're working on a project it's a little bit in our future, but it's on our minds and we've been planning for it, where we can create a platform where people can hang their shows in a way that's a little bit more freeing than some of the other platforms. And I'd like to work with there's like organizations that work with teaching people who have been out of the technology loop how to do things. Like when people get out of incarceration, they don't know how to use a cell phone. Some people, people who have been in inside of an illness in a way, and they have not been able to get out and do things. And people, I would love to hear their stories. I'd love for them to have a platform on which to do it. So this is something that we're doing called radio social media, and we're starting to build that now. And I said 6 words to Vito, and he's like, yeah, let's get some servers and try it out and see. So it's just so great to be working with somebody who doesn't say to me, okay, let's just do one thing at a time, because I don't know how to do that.
I think it's wonderful that you're doing this thing, like, your own tower, because we feel like that a lot, but you're going even another level by getting the hardware or server space, whatever it is, and saying, oh, we're going to do it this way. And I don't F them. We don't care. We're going to do it.
Right. We had enormous problems with the paywall, because they said to me, well, could you stop saying the word blood? Could you stop saying the word sorcery? And I was like, no, we can't. There are places I don't put that because, I'm just clearly what I am, right? It's not like any delusion. So there are places where I just call myself Cagliastro, because I'd like people to have the sensation of being able to access it. Things become difficult for people when they confront words like sorcery and blood sorcery and this kind of thing. So sometimes I lay back a little bit on that to allow people to take a breath and look at the material without their doctrine hitting them in the ass.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I guess that's why you put your name that way.
Yeah.
Greg referred to you as Cagliastro.
Yeah. I'm amongst friends here. Refer to me any way that you're comfortable.
Oh, you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, but that's why I'm doing that. In one of the pages on Dark Matters Radio, we opened it up as Cagliastro Media in this way, because I want people, we carry so much, right? We carry doctrine. We carry this exhaustion of what we're told is possible, of what we're told we should do and should not do, the whole religion thing, the whole ancestral thing, family methodologies, right? So we bring every bit of that to something that's new. And when you confront something that's new, it's, should I not? Is this okay? Is this not okay? So sometimes in my work, I like to give people a landing place where they can say, okay, there's just this Italian girl, and she's just going to tell me some things that I might find interesting, and I don't have to be confronted. So we're presenting Dark Matters Radio in that way. So it has a little bit of a landing place.
I have a great comment there from Cheryl Ann, who was on your show recently, and I had the fortune to hear it, and she told a story about a shadow person, a childhood story. And it's close to home for us, especially Kristen, who's dealt with those shadow figures. But hers had a real twist in it that was just crazy. This kind of a hat-wearing shadow person, if you will, or hat man. That was very cool, Cheryl. And maybe when we're back, maybe we'll bring up childhood experiences, because I think that really does play a role in the outcome of our adulthood and our interests and different things. So yeah, that would be fantastic. Thank you for that story, Cheryl.
I would say thank you, but I'm like, I haven't heard it yet. So
you didn't get to hear that one.
I didn't.
And
I didn't.
I don't know if you're gonna like it, because
Remind me to send you a link so you can get in the library.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just have to be reminded. Right now, Vito's heard that somewhere, and he's like creating the link. He's like already creating the link. So yeah, remind me so you can get into the library.
Yeah,
I can actually send you a guest membership. So that's what he'll do. He'll give me a guest membership, and I'll give it to you, and then you can hear everything. That's really how it works.
Thank you so much.
I've been told that's how it works. It's not a link. I've been told. He's very specific about how things work like that.
And there's our friend Gail, and Gail is somebody you would really want to talk to as far as guests go, and hosts her own podcast called A Small Medium at Large.
Yes.
A fantastic podcast out there, and YouTube channel. We love Gail. She's a wonderful
Contact me, Gail. Sorceress Cagliastro at sorceresscagliastro.com. I can't make it simpler than that.
She is such a plethora throughout her life of things that have happened to her just
Mhm.
nonchalantly
And a free
came out
spirit.
of.
I think
Oh,
you'd get
God.
along great.
And
Lovely.
she's also a shaman.
Oh, right.
From two different.
Contacted by the
Yeah,
Mogul.
you've got to
Shaman.
talk to her.
Very interesting. Is somewhat in a flash. If you watch the Woodstock video from
Yes.
1969,
That
Gail's
too.
there, raising hell. She's a great person.
Yeah.
And see, George says, I've experienced one shadow figure. He even spoke. So shadows are often I don't know. They're not necessarily inherently. I know we're getting a little late here, and we need to wrap up soon. But
Yeah.
shadow figures are not necessarily inherently evil, but if you've had a bad experience with them, you're going to feel that way.
They were evil, and it felt evil. That's how I started off my journey through life. So when I was like 4 years old. So yeah.
But shadows are an amalgam. They come from your mind's ability to interpret the outline and what the outline actually brings. So I feel like, and again, I've said this a lot of times, there's a lot of language for this kind of entity, that kind of entity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the shadow experience is a joint venture. I think that there's an entity there, there's something going on, and I think that we interpret it in a way and open the void, and then it communicates with us. That's just my theory, and it's just a theory on shadows.
Well, I love this, and I think maybe that'll be our topic when we return and have a conversation.
Mhm.
Childhood experiences, shadow people, the bad things that happen to you in childhood, and how that trauma, because we did talk about trauma before, but
Yeah.
perhaps more paranormal things that happen to a person or supernatural, how that may affect them later would be a wonderful topic. And
When you block them out, they don't affect you anymore.
Great, right? This
Yeah.
has been a great show.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're
We
going on
always
2
are
hours,
just-
and I
yeah.
know we don't want to keep you too late, but
Great.
fantastic episode. I love this, and I love our conversations. We'll have
We
to
both
do it again.
Yes.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh God. Thank you
Excellent.
for being here.
I
Once
crew.
again, if you're listening, the place to find Sorceress Cagliastro is clearly www.sorceresscagliastro.com, as well as www.cagliastrotheironring.com.
The radio
They're
show.
different sites.
The radio show's at the justmyname.com. And if you're interested in the radio show, there's two sample shows on the site, and we rotate them, so you get a chance to hear different things. And we'll be moving into all these excellent guests, very exciting stuff coming up. So take a shot.
Absolutely.
This has been great.
And we are, like we said, we are on there talking about trauma and childhood trauma and trauma throughout life. So
Thank you for
As
having
well
me.
as a plethora of other topics.
Yes.
So thank you so much. I'm going to play out of the stream real quick, and I'll be right with you.
yes.
Just want to stand by. We'll wrap things up. Thank you guys for joining us this week. We're going to be doing a Dark Horse Paranormal with Miranda Young, a dual show. This is what we planned, and we need to catch up with her. Miranda Young, of course, the Ghost Biker, doing shows because she has a show on Thursdays as well as us, and we're going to try to see if we can integrate them somehow and do 2 shows together. Fantastic person, and I forget what do you have on Saturday? I'm
drawing a blank, and
oh, I'm so sorry, but we'll post it.
it's
You guys
okay.
will
We
see
do
it.
that.
And thank
Yeah,
you so much for
lock that
joining us
mountain.
all. We love you all. Have a good, safe weekend.
Good night, guys.
Take care.
We love you all.
Bye bye.